Harihi Om Gajananam Bhudaganadisevidham Kavittajambho Balasarapakshitham Umasudam Sokha Vinashakaranam Namami Vickneswara Padapankajam Om Gajananam Mahakayam Vignarajam Vinayagam Vishvesham Vishvashaksham Ganeshayam Namo Namaha. Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ganeshwaraya Arpanamastu. Jnananandamayam Devam Nirmalarspatikatrudhim Adharam Sarva Vidyanam Ayagrivamupaasmahe Yasyadvarada Vakradhyaya Parishatya Parashatham Vignam Nignam Tisatatam Vishvashrimam Tamashraye. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Gurave Sarvalokanam, Bisaje Bhavaroginaha, Nidaye Sarva Vidyanam, Sri Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Dakshinashwaraya Namastu. Ramanujadaya Patram Jnana Vairagya Bhushanam Srimad Venkatanathaya Vandhe Vedanta Deshikam Lakshmi Nata Samarambha Nada Yamuna Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Parampara. Om Apadamapahartharam Dhatharam Sarvasampadam Lokabhiramam Shri Ramam Bhuyo Bhuyo Namamyaham Ramaya Ramabhadraya Ramachandraya Vedase Raghunathaya Nathaya Sithayam Pathaye Namaha. Om Shri Rama Rama Rame 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 Manorame Sahasranama Tattulyam Ramanama Varanane Ramanama Varanane Nama Iti. Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramaya Arpanamastu. Astika Vickneswaren Namo Namaha. Welcome to the last session on the essence of Ramayana. Right? You know, for the last 8 weeks, I've been taking you through the journey of the 7th avatar of Lord Vishnu, which is Rama, in terms of the reason for the birth, you know, why that avatar was taken in the first place. I mean, that's a standard operating procedure, right? SOP. I'm sure everybody knows SOP now in whatever country you are, right? Standard operating procedure. As far as the lineage of the Dashavataram or incarnation is concerned, the standard operating procedure for incarnation to take place is adharma is down, right? Or to bring adharma down, right? Dharma is down, adharma is up, right? So to bring back the balance, to inject the stability of dharma, an incarnation takes place. Okay, so all the incarnations from Matsya Avatar, right? Then to Kurma Avatar, then Varaha Avatar, then Narasimha Avatar, then Vamana Avatar, then Parasurama, then Rama, then Krishna, then Buddha, then Kalki, right? One more to come. So all these avatars took place simply to re-establish dharma. Of course, some came with the power that is vested in the primary avatar, right? Some came without it. Some came with absolutely no power at all, and Rama was one such avatar. Okay. Today, you and I refer to him as an avatar because we read history, we follow all these stories, right? We hear about this all the time. So we know as a matter of fact, we know as a matter of accuracy that Rama was the seventh avatar of Mahavishnu. But the point that I'm trying to say to you is Rama did not know that. So judge Rama as you would a normal man, not on the basis of your biased knowledge that you know he was an avatar of Vishnu. He didn't. He behaved exactly how any normal man would have behaved. And a good comparator to that is Krishna, right? Krishna came with all his powers, right? There are so many things he did because he had those powers, and he could show those powers to people whom was close to him, whom he trusted, right? Karna, Arjuna, the Pandava brothers, Draupadi, right? And he also showed that to many rishis, right? Dronacharya was one. He also showed it to Sakuni, and of course, Pitama, Bhishmacharya, right? Like that. Let's not judge on the basis of what we know. Let's listen to what happened as it was then, but from the futuristic eyes of today, right? So we're going back to the time of Rama, but we're looking at it from today's spectacle. Therefore, we have the richness of history, and you have the added benefit of someone telling you all this who's done the requisite research, right? From primary sources, obviously in India and also over here, right? So, like I said, right, Valmiki Ramayana actually is known as a book that has 7 cantos or 7 kandas or 7 chapters, right? But I told you last week, actually Valmiki, if you look at the original manuscript, you will see that he ends the Ramayana at the end of the Yuddha Kandam, right? After the war, Rama and Sita goes back to Ayodhya. They are crowned as king, and they rule with just, fairly, and prosperity reigned for 10,000 years. And he ended it that way. And of course, the ending Shruti was that the purpose for Ramavatar has been achieved, and therefore the time came for Rama to leave, and he left. How he left, with whom he left, all that is not necessary, right? You come, you go, same thing, right? So the first book, of course, I said to you last week, the 7th book, the Uttarakanda, was a Prakshipta, which is a later addition, right? And therefore, you could see the language, the flow, the consistency, right? The ambience, the settings, all that completely deviated, and changed from the preceding 6 cantos. So we started with Balakanda, the book of youth, and I said to you it had 77 chapters. Then we went to Ayodhya Kanda, book of Ayodhya, what happened in Ayodhya. 119 chapters that one was. And then Aranya Kanda, when, as a result of the occurrences in the palace in Ayodhya, Rama, Sita, and Lakshmana left, and they went to the forest. Aranya, right, book of forest, and that had about 75 chapters, 75, 76. Then how Sita was kidnapped, at the later, towards the tail end, right? For about 13 years, right? They lived a very happy life. Of course, there were many trials and tribulations in terms of all the Rakshasas and Asuras they met to vanquish, but standard operating procedure, don't forget that, right? That was part and parcel. Ravana was just a crest jewel at the end of the day, right? Before that, all the entire crown was decked with all the different Asuras and Asuris and Rakshasas and Rakshasis. So Rama had to kill all of that with the help of Lakshmana and with the help of the rishis that came and empowered him with different weapons. Right? That's another message I told you. You don't have to worry, right? When you're on the path of good, when you are doing dharma, when you are behaving just, when you are behaving fairly, when you are helping others, don't worry about help. It will come when it is meant to come. It's not your concern how it will come, through whom it will come. When it comes, then you will know it has come. You keep questioning, is it going to come? Is it going to come? Then the question remains a question. You will not get a solution. If you focus on the solution, the question no longer remains. If you focus only on the question, the solution remains unaddressed. Right? So the choice is verily ours. So Kishkinda was the holy empire of the monkeys. Kishkinda. Right? That had about 67 chapters. Is the least amount of chapters in the writings of Valmiki. Right? Then, of course, that wonderful journey of Hanuman, we looked at Sundarakandam, right? Book of Beauty. Book of Beauty also had about 68, 69 chapters, but a very powerful chapter or book or kanta, because it can empower your life, just as it empowered Hanuman's life. It can empower your life. You just do what he did, in the way that he did it, for as long as he did it. That's the answer. And then, of course, Yuddha Kandam, right? Rama fought that war then, but we are fighting a war every day, right? With the Ravana within us. The Ravana within us, Ravana is one, the 10-headed one, 5 senses of organ, 5 senses of perception. We live every day. We wake up every day and we go to sleep every day. And the next day we wake up, and throughout the day, we are trying to balance these senses. So this Yuddha Kanda is important for you and I, because every day this battle is happening, isn't it? Battle between the right and the wrong, the good and the bad, the negative and the positive, the to do and the not to do, all of that. So Book of War was 128 chapters. As I said, one of the longest chapters of Valmiki, not because he talked so much purely about the war, but also because what happened after the war, right? So perhaps 70% was dedicated to, the war in itself, and 30% is the post-war happenings, right? The incidents, the occurrences, the events that took place after the war. So back to Ayodhya and all of that. So hence, it's the longest chapter. And of course, as I said to you last week, Valmiki ends it there. But then later the works were taken and Uttarakanda was added, to give it a proper finish, if you like. Right? The Book of Finality or the Book of Answers, just over 110 chapters for that one. So what did we look at in Balakanda, right? Balakanda, if you remember, I spoke to you about the reason why a birth was necessary for Lord Vishnu, i.e. an incarnation was necessitated because of the rising of adharma in Bhuloka. And of course, in the Devaloka, they were all being terrorized and so on and so forth. So everybody went to Brahma. Together with Brahma, they went to Lord Vishnu, and I told you what happened in Vaikuntha, right? And it was agreed that he would come down as Rama. And of course, he did not come alone. He came with a team. I'll just tell you in a while who his team were. And then, of course, back on earth, I spoke to you about Dasharatha, how he was advised to do Putrakameshti Yajna and, of course, the Ashwamedha Yajna. And, of course, he did that. And after his wives partook of the payasha, which came as a result of the final offering of the, what we call Purnahuti, payasam came, and that was distributed, 50%, and then 25%, and then 12.5%, and then the balance 12.5% was given to one wife, and of course, a little bit was taken by a crow or an eagle or whatever bird you might read about, and then again, that went and reached Hanuman in a sense, right? So Balakanda is all about the story of how Rama was born and how he grew up until he reached the age of 11 and 12. Then, of course, Vishwamitra comes, takes him, and his teen life is spent guarding and guiding all the rishis, primarily Vishwamitra, in completing his yajnas. Right. So again, that is part and parcel of establishing dharma. Then, of course, successfully grows into an established warrior under the guidance of Vishwamitra. Rama and Lakshmana return to Ayodhya, but of course, before they do, the final journey in the Balakanda was, of course, Vishwamitra takes them to Mithila, where King Janaka has a daughter called Sita, for whom he is conducting a Swayamvara. And then, of course, nobody can lift the Dhanush, the Pinaka. And Vishwamitra waits. Rama waits for Vishwamitra to tell him. Rama, of course, didn't know that he was going to take part in the Swayamvara, because Vishwamitra never told him. He just said, we are passing through this place, let's stop, I know the king. And then, of course, he follows just like a Shishya would. Never question the master. Never question the master, right? When you have absolute faith, your faith should determine whether you should raise the question or not. If indeed you say, I have to question this, then you have not accepted the master in utmost faith, and you should seek a way out, right? Because only where the faith is untainted, the master will reveal his powers. If the faith is tainted, he will wait until your faith is restored to its full glory, then he will show the powers. Otherwise, you are not, you are a rough stone, you're not a diamond, right? Only when you're a diamond, he will polish you and put you on display. Until then, he'll wait. That's all the gurus, right? Then, of course, after the marriage, of course, Vishwamitra had a plan already, right? So he knows, Janaka has two daughters, and of course his brother has two daughters. So he sends word to Dasharatha to bring the other two, right? Bharata and Shatruguna, and they all come, and the four of them get married, and they all happily return back to Ayodhya, which brought us to Ayodhya Kanda. And then, of course, Rama's, I told you that part, I don't know if you still remember, one day, many years after they all come, they all are happy, all are married. And Dasharatha sees a white silver hair and he says, maybe it's time for me to go, right? The acceptance, right? This teaches acceptance of the continuous journey. So one stage is finished, next stage is calling, you have to go, right? That's the lesson. So anyway, he prepares for Rama's coronation, and that doesn't take place because of Kaikeyi. And of course, on the basis of the promise given to her by Dasharatha, he had to honor the promise. Of course, she was poisoned by Manthara, right? Her maid. Right? This is when you don't exercise your own thoughts and your own intelligence, someone else will penetrate and do injustice to what you yourself should have done, right? So be careful. Never let another person into here. Because if you yourself cannot control this, can you imagine what will happen if another person enters it? It will be chaos. And that was clearly shown in the case of Kaikeyi, where, she loved Rama very much, but then desire was not desired. Therefore, problems. Therefore, chaos, right? And of course, that led to Rama leaving. Lakshmana did not want to let him go alone. Sita did not want to let him go alone. So at the end of the day, Rama said, I don't want you to come, but if you two want to come with me, then I cannot stop you, right? So he took his wife Sita and he took his brother Lakshmana, right? Remember, none of these people know who they are. You and I today, we know, oh, Rama was Vishnu, oh, Sita was Mahalakshmi, oh, Lakshmana was Adishesha. So how can we judge them with the knowledge we have, but not that the knowledge they had and the knowledge with which they were born? So clearly it's wrong, right? So stop doing it, right? The other day I had a question. Somebody sent me a WhatsApp. Rama was an avatar. Why did he go through so much suffering? I said, Rama did not know he was an avatar. Rama was born normal. So I asked this person back the question. I said, do you know if you are an avatar? He said, of course not. I said, then how can I judge you? How can the future judge you on the basis that if you were indeed an avatar, you suffered so much. But I didn't know. For you is one rule, for Rama is another rule? No, 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 no. Right? So Aranya Kanda is all about their journey in the forest, who they met, what they did, with whose help they did, that journey. And that journey, the main lesson for you is whenever help is meant to come, it will come. 100%. This is the basis of Swadharma Paripalana, right? Then, of course, towards the tail end of Kishkinda Kanda, Sita was captured, Jatayu was killed, and then Rama was obviously, despondent, consoled by Lakshmana, decide to go and look for Sita, meet the dying Jatayu, and obviously do the last rites, and they go towards Kishkinda. They arrive at Kishkinda, very important because it's the first time Hanuman, the mere monkey, is meeting Rama, right? And of course, what began as a suspicion on the part of Sugriva and the other monkeys was clarified by Hanuman. And of course, a friendship bloomed there purely because there was another job to be done by Rama there, right? In terms of Vali. Remember, Rama is dharma, Vali is adharma. So the purpose of the birth was for dharma to be reinstated over adharma, right? How it is done is not the issue. The fact that it was done is the lesson. Then we went to Sundarakandam, how Hanuman goes in search of Sita, and how Hanuman, by going within, realized the absolute power that he was vested with, that was lying latent, which by going within, he patented. The latent power was made potent because he made it patent. And once it is patent, you potentize it. The potency of the power lies in how you utilize it. So that was Sundarakandam, how Hanuman flew and he never stopped. That is desire, flying over illusion. Then, of course, how he meets Sita, his conversation with, Ravana in the court, and Vibhishana Dharma. How, Vibhishana installed Dharma in the court of Ravana by saying messengers should not be killed. And then, of course, Ravana wasn't getting off his high horse. In the end, war was declared, which led us to Yuddha Kandam, right? So Hanuman came back, conveyed the news, and they all went. How did they go? They crossed. How did they cross? They built a bridge. Who built the bridge? Monkeys built the bridge. Who helped? Squirrels and other little animals helped, right? And I told you about NASA's recent discovery that indeed there is the remnants or the residues of a bridge, which they went and tested, and they found that the rocks age, going back to the 7th century. And the sand is a later age sand. So these are proper documented research on the part of NASA, right? So what was Ithihasa, right? Ithihasam, that means this is how it was then. Ithihasam, right? This is how it was then. So it's no fallacy, it's no bedtime story, and it certainly is not some grandma tales that the grandma feeds the grandson when she is feeding him, right? It is not that. So the war happens, and of course, we know what happened in the war. We looked at Hanuman's journey to Kailash or to the Himalayas to bring back the Sanjeevani herb, to re-establish the potency of Ayurveda. And then finally, of course, one by one, how the Asuras are killed. Finally, Ravana himself goes down. Ravana and Kumbhakarna. I told you who they are in actual life. They are Jaya and Vijaya, who are the security guards standing in front of the sanctum sanctorium of Lord Mahavishnu in Vaikunta, right? Anyway, it's another story, yeah? Then finally, Uttarakhanda, which we looked at last week, right? How everybody, how life carried on, leading to Sita's banishment, the birth of Lava and Kusha, and then, of course, the final Ashwamedha Yajna, which led to, Rama finding out about Lava and Kusha, and then trailing them and discovering, Valmiki and Sita, and then the return of Sita to Bhumi Devi from where she came. She returned. This re-established the fact that where we come from, we go back. What we do whilst here determines where we go. 7 lokas up, 7 lokas down, right? No one determines that but you and I ourselves, right? He doesn't determine that, you and I. The chance that is given is you are alive in this life. How you live it is your call, right? At the end of the day, the accounts will be seen, right? So that was the 7 kandas. Now, I must say the name of Rama, I must remind you that, Rama Nama Taraka Mantraha, the name of Rama is in itself a Taraka Mantra because Ra-A-Ma, 3 syllables, right? Means fire, light, and tranquility. Agni, sun, and moon. Fire, light, and tranquility. Therefore, by chanting the name of Rama, your sins are verily extinguished. Darkness is lifted, and emotional turbulence is clear, replaced by peace. Remember, for peace to descend, why do they qualify the word peace by using descend after the word peace? Nobody says to you, peace ascends. No. Your question, right? Question why they always use the word descends after they use the word peace. So in fact, I've been to several churches for, some sermons and being part of a mass. And always, after the pastor or the bishop or says something, he will say, let peace descend upon us. Be still and let peace descend, So why do they use let peace descend? Because what must ascend in order for peace to descend? Emotional turbulence. Restlessness of the mind must ascend and go out. Then only peace can descend, right? So creating the right ambience, creating the right environment will determine how soon and how consistent that peace will descend itself upon you, right? So Rama is very important, right? In fact, in the early writings, right, the word Rama is not written as R-A-M-A. This is modern version, right? The documents and the almanacs that I have seen, right, not just here, but in India as well, is R, A, and then A-A-M-A. So there's R, 3 A's and M-A, Rama, right? So Ra, A, Ma. So 3 syllables. Also, Rama is powerful, right? Because when you say Rama, Ra comes from Narayana, Ra, Nara, Naraha. Naraha means man, right? So Ra comes from Narayana, and Ma comes from Namah Shivaya, Namah, Ma, right? So Ra, Narayana, Ma, Shivaha. So Rama is a fantastic, powerful mantra, but just by saying Om Shri Rama Jayam, you are saying, may Lord Narayana and Lord Shiva collectively bless me. So why should not it be seen as the Taraka Mantra? You tell me. Buy one, get one free, bog off. Like that, buy one, get one free. Rama, Lakshmana, Bharata, Shatrugna. Just Rama on his own is calling Vishnu and Shiva together. Right? And when I spoke to you about Balakanda, I spoke to you about the power behind each person's name. Rama, I told you what it means. Lakshmanaha, Lakshmana, Lakshmi Sampannaha. Bharatha, Bharatarajyam. Right? Shatraguna, Shatrugunaha. Right? So I explained to you what all these names mean. Anyway, the point is Rama means worshipping Narayana and Namah Shivaya. So Dasharatha represents, Dasha means 10, Ratha means chariots, right? So that 10 chariots means 10 horses. 10 horses means 10 senses, 5 senses of action, 5 senses of perception, right? And of course, him controlling it is the mind. And the mind is represented by Ayodhya, the impenetrable, right? The impenetrable, if the 5 senses of perception, the 5 senses of organ are in place, then the mind is impenetrable. Ayodhya was impenetrable because Dasharatha was always in control. Of course, minus at 1 or 2 occasions. That was also because he had given the word. And therefore, he was bound by the word. A man's honor is verily his word, isn't it? So, basically, Dasharatha means the impenetrable mind because the senses are all well under control and in place. Right? Permission is needed from the mind and intelligence to penetrate the senses. So, the intelligence is always directing the mind, and there is no problem. It's when the intelligence is subservient or subordinate to the mind, then you have the problems, right? So who has the control? You have the control, no one else, right? Remember, I've always told you this. When wisdom speaks, intelligence should listen. When intelligence speaks, mind should listen. When mind listens and speaks, the senses will listen. When the senses listen, the body follows. That's the order, right? Maintain that order, you'll be fine. 3 wives of Dasharatha, right? Kausalya, Sumitra, Kaikeyi represent the 3 gunas. One is purity, one is activity, one is indolence, right? Rajo guna, Sattva guna, Tamo guna, right? The 4 sons of Dasharatha, Rama, Lakshmana, Bharata, Shatruguna, each of them refer to one Veda, symbolize the Chaturvedas. Rama represents the Rig Veda, Lakshmana, the Yajur Veda, Bharata, the Sama Veda, and Shatruguna, the Atharvana Veda. Also, the 4 sons represent the 4 Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Remember, the Purusharthas, I spoke to you when I spoke to you about Bhajagovindam. The Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, I spoke to you when I did Bhagavad Gita. The Purusharthas, I spoke to you again this time when I'm doing the Ramayana. So it is not a concept that is exclusive to just one thing or another, or one person or another, or one avatar or another. This is throughout the ages. This concept has got the same value as being a Chiranjeevi, right? So don't forget, this is not just time-based concepts. These are timeless concepts. Okay. Sita, what did I say she was? Sita was Brahmajnana, right? Absolute wisdom. She came from earth. Earth is rich. Rich with what? Rich with knowledge. Rich with, prosperity. Hence, Sita was the embodiment of knowledge and prosperity. But of course, when you don't control knowledge, it will lead to desire. And desire will lead to terrible consequences. Sita was Brahmajnani, but she was so fascinated by the golden deer, she fell victim to it. She wanted to possess it. She desired it. And there begins the problem. When jnana is thwarted by desire, the result is chaos. In Sita's case, it was separation, right? Remember, I told you in Rama's journey, he came to a mountain called Rishyamukha. Rishyamukha was there to teach Rama the quality of detachment because he was attached to Sita. Herein, another question was asked to me, right? How come Rama being God, why was he attached? How many times to tell you, you and I today, we know Rama was God, but Rama, when he was born, he didn't know he was God. So don't judge him with present knowledge. Judge him with the knowledge that Rama was born with, right? So Rama had to learn detachment, and the mountain Rishyamukha. I've spoken about Rishyamukha in one of the reflection series as well. I told you a mountain, right? So then we found, Rama became friends with Sugriva in the Kishkinda Kanda. Sugriva represents discrimination, right? And of course, Hanuman represented devotion, faith, courage, right? Devotion, faith, and courage. Three qualities are essential to any spiritual seeker. Devotion, faith, courage. Three qualities that are essential to every or any spiritual seeker. As a result of Rama's friendship with Sugriva, who represented discrimination, Rama helped Sugriva by killing Vali. Vali represented wickedness or cruelty or adharma. Rama represented dharma. So dharma is only proper, it is only law, it is only natural that dharma kills adharma, right? Live by the sword, you die by the sword, right? Those who live in glass houses should not throw stones, in other words. Ahalya, right, was cursed and she became a little stone. You see, someone asked me last week, why the rishis put a curse? Well, if there's a problem, there must be a solution, isn't it? Sometimes the problem comes disguised as a solution that will come later. Rishis have far-reaching vision, right? I told you they have jnana drishti, so they can see far ahead. So they already know you have a problem. And to solve that problem, they will curse you to a level where you think, oh my God, this is terrible. But actually, that will be a blessing in disguise. Because what happened? She became a stone. When the feet of Rama touched, she regained who she was. And remember, all the asuras in the jungles and the travels of Rama, the moment he killed them, right, through whatever means, they regained their original self. They were freed from the curse. So sometimes, you use the word, the expression, the phrase, blessing in disguise, isn't it? So don't look at a curse as a curse. Always say, okay, thank you for the blessing. Because even if the person used it as a curse on you, if you take it as a blessing, then you tell me, what does it become? Does it become a curse or does it become a blessing? You tell me. You think and you tell me. It is not what others tell you. It is what you accept about yourself that is more powerful and more empowering than any other third-party expression. You, your thoughts, and yourself, right? Ahalyo taraka Rama, Sharpa vimochana Rama. Ahalya, remember, just the touching of his feet made her free from the curse that she was subjected to. Remember, Swami always says, right, what is pain? He says, pain is an interval between two pleasures. And he doesn't stop there. He says, pleasure is but an interval between two pains. So Hanuman crossed the ocean of delusion, alternating between pain and pleasure, right? If you look at Vishnu, he sits on Garuda, isn't it? Right? There are two ways in which you can look at the two wings of Garuda. And I will always look at the more powerful interpretation, is one wing represents devotion, bhakti, the other wing represents shraddha or faith. When you are flying high on devotion and faith, you can carry the Lord, the Supreme Lord, on you because your wings are gliding with faith and devotion, right? But when you start flapping, right, one wing is pain, one wing is pleasure. So when you're flying high, remember, it will be a mixed journey with pain and pleasure. But Hanuman, in his flight, did not stop anywhere. He started in one place and he landed at the place of his destination, where he wanted to be. He crossed the ocean of delusion very clearly. Or of course, his journey was alternated with pain and pleasure. Remember, he met 4 Rakshasis along the way, right? Just by chanting Rama's name alone, he could transcend that ocean. He could learn how to fly. That is how powerful the name is, right? If you don't have so much faith, right, you can try to take a sankalpa. Say, I want to write 1,000 names of Om Shri Ramajayam. So your sankalpa is whatever, whatever you say. I will finish writing this 1,000 names over 7 days or 3 days or whatever is your sankalpa, right? So you determine. Remember, no one person outside can come and tell you, you must do this for 7 days, then God will become close to you, right? Between you and God, you don't need an agent. Between you and God, you only need your conviction, your sankalpa, then it's between you two. Whether you want to go around Ganesha once or whether you want to go around Ganesha 16 times. Many people ask me, brother, how many times do I have to go? I say, how many times do you want to go? Or some people say 16. Some people say 23. Some people say 27. So I told him 3,947. Huh? 3,947? Why so much? I said, you said people tell you 16, 27, 47, 9, isn't it? I just came out with the number. I said, you are going around Ganesha to get something you want. Why should someone else tell you how many times you should go around? You go around as many times as you want, or as few times as you want. Go around once. Your sankalpa is the same, isn't it? So going around 16 times is going to enhance and fortify and strengthen your sankalpa? No. So go around once. Or go around 3 times. Or since the magical number 9, religious number 9, spiritual number 9, go around 9 times. Right? 3 is the usual standard because you do one for your, physical self, one for your mental self, and one for your spiritual or universal self. Okay, 3 times is good enough. 3 murtis, 3 guna, 3 devis, 3 kala, 3 sandhyas. All that, so do 3 times. Finish. No one can come and tell you 3 is wrong, 7 is right, 9 is wrong, 8 is right, 27 is correct, 45 is wrong. No one can tell you that, right? So the point I'm making is, whatever Hanuman did, he did purely based on his faith, on the power vested in the name Ram. And he proved it. He said, the name Ram is so potently vibrating in me that even every single hair on my body vibrates to that Ram. And Ram verily lives in my heart. Here, see, right? Hridaya Pradishthavanaha, I told you, right? Once after Yuddha Khanda, they came back to Ayodhya. So Rama was ideal in every way, right? His ideal son, ideal brother, ideal friend, ideal enemy, ideal king, ideal husband, yes, as far as being a husband is concerned. But of course, I said to you very clearly, there are some things that you do as a friend, it may not seem right as a brother. There are some things you do as a brother, may not seem right as a brother-in-law. There are some things you do as a husband, may not seem right as a son, right? So as a son, you do something for your mother, it may not sit well with, maybe your wife or maybe your in-laws. If you do something for your wife, it may not sit with your mother or your own family. But what you're doing is right. As a son, you're doing for your mother, correct? As a husband, you're doing for your wife. So in that sense, Rama was ideal. What he did as a king, of course, raises questions of why. That why is karma? Attachment is not a recent problem, He suffered because of attachment. Sita suffered because of attachment. So the moral of the story is, don't be attached. Detach. Satsangatvam nitsangatve, nitsangatvam nirmohatve, nirmohatvam nischalatatvam, nischalatatvam jivan mukti. Finish. Nischalatatvam jivan mukti. Very clearly it's being said to you. Once you detach and you attach to the immutable reality, that's it. You don't have to worry about anything else. This is what the Ramayana and the Mahābhārata, the Gita and the Ramayana teaches. And certainly this was a core calling from the Bhajagovindam, right? How to live in this world without being touched by sorrow. Rama was fine until Sita was abducted. Why Rama was not fine after Sita was abducted? Because he was attached to Sita. Of course he was attached to Sita. He was a normal man, attached to his beautiful and loving wife. Of course, when you suffer, grief will take over. When grief takes over, delusion comes. When delusion comes, a sense of balance and, fairness goes. until he realized what his dharma was. Right action. Always when right action takes over attachment, then you are on the path of dharma. When bad action takes over attachment, that means the attachment is telling you what to do. See, the question is, we cannot avoid possession. We cannot avoid action. But we can learn to control. Right? Bad action 100% gives sorrowful results. Right? Good action will give good results. Right? Yat bhavam that bhavati. Yeah? Yat mano that manushyaha. Right? As the thought, so the man. Right? Like that. But you have to go through the teachings of the lessons in whether it's the Gita or whether it's the Ramayana, in order for you to know how we can live in this world without being touched by sorrow. Hence, you need Ramayana, right? Ramayana, another way to look at it is Ramayana. You read the wisdom of Rama is what we need to live in this world righteously, right? Otherwise, there'll always be a problem, isn't it? Remember, nothing gained in this world is permanent. Nothing gained in this world is permanent. The only one thing that is constant and permanent is change. So when change happens, embrace change, accept change, and learn to adapt yourself with the new changes. Then your life will continue. But if you stand still, then your life comes to a stop. Your life comes to a stop, but life in general continues, right? Then you go through sorrow because you see everything else is moving except you. Move along. Then you'll go from where you were at the point of sorrow, you're moving along, isn't it? So you're no longer at that same place of sorrow. Sooner or later, you'll free yourself from it, right? And of course, I always ask you, what is the definition of enough? No matter how much a person possesses, there will always be a scope for a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more of this, a little bit more of that, a bigger of this, a bigger of that, little bit of this. Possessions and actions are always tainted by sorrow. Desires are always tainted by sorrow, consequences. Wise men do not grieve over the arrival. Wise men do not grieve over the arrival of people, over the arrival of objects, over the arrival of situations in life. Arrival and departure does not disturb a wise man in his spiritual journey. The real nature of the person is not the body and the mind, it is his consciousness. Shivoham, Shivoham. Shivoham, Shivoham. I am the absolute and the one consciousness. Right? A person's sense of security, sense of peace, sense of happiness does not depend on any external entity. It is all internal. It is mind and sense based. Mind and sense based. Everything else is nonsense. 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 Right? When you internalize, everything becomes mind and senses. When you externalize, everything becomes nonsense or nonsense based. If you want to be a spiritualist, then a spiritualist is one who is free from all emotional dependencies, because emotional dependency leads to despondency. It is the ignorance of this fact that causes all the sorrow in life. So if you want to be a spiritual seeker, if you want to go on this journey of spirituality, be free from emotional dependency. This is from this emotional dependency that the phrase or expression emotional blackmail has come out. Right? So what's the solution? The solution, permanent solution, is to gain knowledge of one's own true nature, not one's earthly nature. You know, the who am I question, who am I really? Remember when I spoke to you about Bhajagovindam, I said to you how Adi Shankara met this Chandala. And he said, out of my way, I need to go to Kashi Vishwanath Mandir. And the Chandala says, what is it that you seek to remove from your presence? Is it the body? Is it the mind? Or is it the I that is non-existent, yet existent universally? At that point, Shankara knew that was none other than Lord Shiva. So the point of that was, the Lord will test you as you get closer and closer and closer. This is like in computer language, the level of security rises as you break or hack through each level. The closer you get to the source, the more harder it is that security level is very high, right? Similarly, if you can accept that with mere computers and packages, then this is life we are talking about. Your life that you do not want anymore in terms of rebirth. Now you tell me, what sort of firewall do you think will be there? What sort of security? With mere materialistic things, you can have so many levels of security. Life, punarjanmaha, you don't want this punarjanmaha. Then you just imagine, right? So, develop a sense of balance or neutrality. No likes, no dislikes, acceptance, right? Eradication of sense-based pleasures because they are very, very temporary. Learn to live. Sometimes a bit of hunger is good for you. Then because people without food, how they are feeling, right? Because all this will learn to control the mind and harness the mind. And this is where the beginning of knowledge takes place. You keep going into likes and dislikes, attachment, sense pleasure, uncontrolled mind, then all these are hindrances that knowledge will never take off. It will never spring off. And you will be at the same place over and over and over and over again. So you have first to become free of this. And that's what the Ramayana teaches. Right? Rama, at Balakanda, he was already given a teacher to prepare him for what is to become much later in his life. As a brahmachari, but this was going to prepare him for his grahastha stage. And what took place in his grahastha stage prepared him for vanapratishtha and ultimately sannyasa. Right understanding and being convicted to this truth. That is the only way you can complete your journey properly. Right? Being convicted. Right? See, just like the Bhagavad Gita, when I spoke to you, the Ramayana actually takes you from wherever you are, gradually, slowly, and systematically to this understanding, to this freedom. But only if you practice it consistently. That is in your hands. Right? It's not on the length and breadth of the beauty of the way I have said this to you. It is not dependent on the language I have used. It is not dependent on my skill of delivery. It is dependent on your consistent practice of the lessons that you have gained, right? So let me tell you who all, the key players were in Ramayana, right? Who all they were in the actual sense of the word. But of course, they did not know that. So of course, Mahavishnu was Rama and Mahalakshmi was Sita. They were born without the knowledge of who they are. That is why Kala Devan had to come in the end. And see, Sita's journey was to end there, and it ended there. Bhumi Devi came and took her, and she regained her status as Mahalakshmi. Right? Rama still continued until Kala Devan came and said, look, this is why, this is who you are, this is what happened, blah, 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 blah. Time to go. Right? So Rama was Mahavishnu. Who was Lakshmana? Lakshmana was Adishesha. Remember the bhajan, there's a beautiful bhajan, isn't it? Adishesha Ananta Sayana Srinivasa Sri Venkatesha. So Adishesha was Lakshmana. That's why they never separated, because Vishnu is always an Adishesha, isn't it? Right? Shanga, Bharatha, Chakra, Shatraguna. Indra came as Vali. Surya came as Sugriva. Vishwakarma, the celestial architect, was born as Nala. Agni Deva was born as Nila. Right? Brahma was born as Jambavan. And of course, Lord Shiva as Hanuman. So you can imagine the power behind these forces that came to reinstate dharma. What force can stand against all these forces together. That's why another thing you should remember is whatever you ask God, make sure you know what you're asking, because you will get it. Ravana thought he was very, very smart. I mean, in fact, he was, right? But he thought he was that much powerful for him to disregard mere man and monkey. So his destruction came in the form of a very normal man and a very, very normal clan of monkeys. But in that journey of the monkeys, one monkey stood out and became, a force in his own name, Hanuman. So if you can subdue your animal tendencies and increase your Devic tendencies, then you too can grow like Hanuman. Finish. That is the story. That is the message, right? That's why Rama Avatar was so powerful, because Rama was Vishnu, Hanuman was Shiva, and Jambavan was Brahma. All three Murtis came. Power pack, as they say, right? Everything happens for a reason. If you keep focusing on what has happened, you are not going to move, you're not going to progress. You're not going to evolve. You will devolve, right? Karma will always rule. Was ruling, is ruling, will continue to rule for eternity. Karma. No one is exempt. No one is exempt. Whatever is happening is as a result of what we have done. Now, how can we control the future? Do the right thing. How did I say do the right thing? Think, speak, and do. Dharmically. No bad karma will come. So you have the power to control your karmic consequences. Don't go and blame, the Navagraha, saying, oh, this particular planet is not sitting in the right house. It's not doing this. I have to do that. I have to do this. No, you have to do the right thing. That's all. Right thing all the time, not right thing sometime, right? So focus on your thoughts, focus on your words, and focus on your actions. Nothing else matters. Remember, your spiritual journey is yours to make and yours alone to make. It doesn't relate to anybody else. Yours and yours alone, 100%, right? So it's it's been a fantastic journey. I mean, not least of all for me, right? I'm sure it has been for most of you. At least in 1 year. This whole Ramayana thing started, if I can share a bit of history with you. I did this, this 8-day talk in a temple in 2018 on the occasion of the Brahmotsavam, right? So Lakshmi Narayana temple in Maharashtra, in London. And they said, Professor, can you come and give a talk on Ramayana? They said, can you come and talk for 2 days? I said, you want me to talk about Ramayana for 2 days? Ramayana has 7 kandas. I need minimum 7 days. And I need 1 day to, finish it properly. So they said, we only have 8 days. We cannot give you the 8 days. We can give you 7 days. So 7 days I went and spoke. And, what had happened was, before that, see, your journey has to begin somewhere, right? My journey actually began with that. I'm talking about, the beginning of my speeches being recorded, and, the beginning of the YouTube and all of that, right? Many years ago, right? I had a very good friend, many years ago, right? He sadly passed on now, right? Some of you might know him. His name is Bharat Jogia. He told me, he said, Vignesh, I don't know what you're doing, right? Or you should actually record your talks and you should put it on YouTube. When he said this to me, in about 2003, 2004, And I just dismissed. I said, Anna Bharat, I do a bit of talking here and there, but, I'm no great person. He said, no, you should do it because, I think that's what you're meant to do. At the time I thought, Bharat being Bharat, always saying the nice thing, right? Telling me that. Then I did a few talks. One of the temples, not in many temples, but in Hatfield, I used to do a few talks. And Ganesh, one day, he said, your talk's recorded anywhere? I said, no. Then he said, I'm going to send you something. he bought a recording set for me, which I still have and I still use, right? So that was the set that I used for recording, audio recording of my speech in the Mahalakshmi temple. Then, of course, I did a series of on Hinduism, all the various god forms from Ganesha to Murugan to the Trimurtis to the Three Devis, to Gayatri Devi and so on and so forth. That's all on YouTube. He then said to me last year, he said, what happened with those recordings? Then I sent it to him, and then he put it in an audio form, and then we released it on YouTube as an audio version. And I sent it to many of you on WhatsApp, right? And then he said, why not do a session, a series of talks on this? And that's how, this whole thing started. The point I'm trying to make is last year, just before the Ramanavami, we released the 7 kandas of Ramayana on YouTube. This year, right, Ramanavami is on 27th of April. And we've gone one whole circle, right? One whole circle in terms of, doing 9 or 10 weeks of Bhajagovindam, and then doing 3 weeks on karma, and then doing various other, talks, preparatory talks. Karma was preparatory for Bhagavad Gita, which went on for 11 weeks. You see, I never knew that I would be doing this, number one. Coming back to what I said about Ramayana, when it's time for you to do something and you're on the right path, the help will come. I mean, who in their right minds will say, I'll take on the entire Bhagavad Gita? Now looking back, I'm thinking, how in God's name did I manage that? Then I know the answer is in my question. How in God's name did I manage that? You idiot, you said it. It's in God's name that you managed to do it. Absolutely. Not just, these things are unprecedented, right? And I'm saying it with utmost humility, because without His grace, there is no way this could have been achieved. So the entire Bhajagovindam, every single shloka, 30 slokas there, right? Every one of them we went through. And that was a wonderful journey. That was the beginning. That paved the way for us to do 11 weeks of Bhagavad Gita. What a fantastic journey that was for those of you who journeyed with me. Then, of course, I spoke to you about devotion, duty, dharma, and faith, and surrender as a precursor to Ramayana. And we've done the last 9 weeks. Today is the 9th week. Oh, what a fantastic journey that was. So the two great Ithihasas, the Mahābhārata and the Ramayana, now you've got the essence of. So I hope it will catapult you from where you were, right, to where you ought to be. And obviously that's not a full stop, that's just a comma. Where you are to where you should be, and then where you were, where you're going to be to where you are going further to be. And that journey is continuous, one journey after another. Life is but a continuous series of journeys. You start one, you finish it, you start the next one, you finish it, you start the next one, you finish it, until your journey ends. Until then you continue.